Do you ever wonder what happened to your friends from high school? I mean, you were so close. You laughed together, you cried together, you shared some of the best years of your lives together. And yet, somehow through life, you just lost touch. Now it's time to relive those moments once again. Introducing the podcast that takes you back in time to the place where it all began. This is Class Reunion. We're bringing you all the gossip, secrets, and scandals from your high school days that you won't want to miss. Join us as we catch up with old classmates and dive into the wildest stories from our high school days. From those legendary parties to the infamous cliques, we're spilling all the tea on who's who and what really went down. So grab a seat, turn your volume up, and get ready for a trip down memory lane. Class Reunion, the podcast that reunites us all. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Class Reunion. Today, I am doing another homage to a neighborhood. It's my neighborhood. We're going to call it the Eldridge Lane Gang. We did it with Forest Wood, and today we have everyone from my street on Eldridge Lane. So it's going to be a little emotional because it hits home, and I'm very excited and nervous to be reunited with such close friends that carved my childhood and made some great memories. So I just want to make sure I go around the room and introduce everyone. Beth, why don't you start first?
Beth Brownson, and we lived basically right around the corner and across the street from you, Leanne.
Yep.
Right on Eldridge Lane in Greenfreeze North. We moved in 1966 when we were about 2 years old.
Excellent. Yvonne?
So it's Yvonne Picard, Louisville now, and we were the first house when you turned on to Eldridge. And when you moved in, I'm trying to remember. I think I was 4 years old, so maybe 1968, 9. Somewhere in there.
Me too, Yvonne. Julie?
Julie Morrow, PETA now. We lived straight down Eldridge right before the curve. Just after the curve, maybe right across from the Brownsons. And we moved in when I was 1, so it was 1968.
And Becca?
Yes, Becca Brownson, Eshelman now. And yeah, same as Beth. We were in between the Aronsons and the Chamberlains. And right across from Tim Catchpole.
And Beth and Becca are twins. So we're going to talk about that real quick. But Yvonne and I, before we started, we were talking about that bend in the road and how it just changes who you ended up knowing or what your memories are, because you have all these curves through this Cranbrook subdivision, which is what the whole neighborhood was called. And it's just interesting who connects with who in, based on where they live. So Eldridge Lane was named Eldridge Lane because at the tip of the front entrance of Eldridge Lane was Mrs. Eldridge. And I always wondered, I know some of you have blueprints of like the first, homes. I think we're all original first-time owners. I wonder how she was able to nab that name, knowing that Cranbrook subdivision was so large as a whole. Does anybody know how she got the rights to that street?
I thought someone said that I don't know if she donated the property or when she sold it. Part of that, when it was transferred, was that she wanted us to be able to have access to Birmingham schools. So that front section had to be allowed to have access to the Birmingham schools. And I'm sure that was part of the whole thing where they named
That's really cool, Yvonne. I didn't even know that.
The
Yeah.
house is gone and there's 4 houses there.
I know. And I loved her house. And then it was this spooky enigma of like, nobody ever really went on that property. So it was a weird, I'm sure she was a lovely person, but like you just didn't go.
Sarah Catchpole and I one time wrote a note and took flowers to her.
Oh.
And she didn't answer the door. Someone else did. But we were like, I wonder, because we were always like, who is this Mrs. Eldridge?
I just wanted to see inside of that house.
Yeah. I think by then she was very old already.
So when they did sell that house, when it went up for sale, my sister Diane and me went through the house. And it was very different than what we thought as kids.
Right.
It was definitely not as grand as what we envisioned it. But it was very interesting to go through, and they had a massive safe in the basement with the name Eldridge on it. I mean, so there was some very interesting things about it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That just puts some intrigue into the whole thing. And Yvonne, I don't know how you survived, because when we would have, I don't know if it was a storm or whatever the case was, her alarm would go off. Do you remember that? And we'd call the police for days.
Yes.
It would go on for days. So if we could hear it, you certainly did, because you were right there. That's cool. Okay. So also there was a stream that went behind some of our homes, and I wanted to ask Beth and Becca, did you feel left out is the wrong word, but did you want to know what it was like to live behind the river or the stream?
Yeah, exactly. Because it went straight behind Nancy Royal's house, as I recall. Yes. And I do remember when they got a big crane in and like they stretched out the creek or something. They had some major equipment down at some point. However, I remember always riding our bikes down to the front end of the creek, right by, we always called it the creek, right?
Yeah.
Right by your house, Yvonne. Right by your house. And you could go down. It's all grown up right now and you can't see even the water right now. But we would go down and we would like throw sticks and throw rocks in it. And I always remember
for
there
hours.
Was like hours. I mean, we would just throw junk in there. And I remember there was some kind of, it must have been a wood pipe sticking out of it, but it was just curved and it was all, I kept thinking it was a snake. That was one of my like 5-year-old memories.
Right. Did anyone fall in? I did.
Oh, yeah.
We used to go ice skating on it all the time.
We did too, Julie.
This is a picture of when they were digging it from our backyard. I think it was basically a drainage ditch, right?
Yes.
It didn't hold a purpose. It wasn't like it was a river runs through it. It was we just, like meant to,
Oh, we knew people who walked down through it and came out on the other side of the street.
Right. It was like
for sure. Sometimes you saw a canoe, which I don't know how they got through, but there would be a canoe every once in a while. And then I had ice skates. I'm sure we all had ice skates. But Julie, I have a sad memory, and I wanted to know I know. Can I bring that up?
Yes. Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm going to say. Isn't it funny? After all these years, we know exactly what the memories are. We were all ice skating, I think playing hockey, and poor Butterscotch, that was the cat's name, right?
Yeah.
Poor Butterscotch was found frozen underneath the ice. Can you imagine Julie's heart? Like it was shocking.
Yeah. And like, I don't think it was an accident.
Oh, I'm getting the scoop. What do you?
Oh, wow.
Some neighborhood,
some kids did it?
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't my brothers.
No, it wasn't anyone here's brother.
Just throwing them out there right under the bus.
No.
Julie, that rings a bell, and I don't know what. Yeah, that does ring a bell, which made it even worse because he was missing, or she, or And
I don't know it.
We were young, but I mean, I still remember you being worried about the cat and just the shock and horror of us skating around and
finding poor Butterscotch.
Oh,
yeah, it was horrible.
That was awful.
But we still had fun at the creek.
I mean, it's such a strange, weird, classic story of like a weird, it sure is a memory. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And then Yvonne, you definitely lived at the end where it was cool with all those trees, and we would ride.
What did we call that?
I know there was a name.
The field.
Oh,
that's right.
So scientific. Okay.
Lots of forts were built there, and just lots of
and
fun.
The ramps for we'd ride our bikes
down in those pines, and
yes, and all the sap. I grew up with sap on my hands all the time, but I do have a memory.
And all kinds of things.
It was like you could just use your imagination and get lost in it. And I think it was Larry. Tell me if you remember this. I got stuck in the tree and I couldn't find my way down. I climbed it 1,001 times, but I went up a couple branches too high. And I got really, really nervous. And one of your brothers, I don't know who it was, Yvonne, came. You went to the house, thank God, right there. And he guided me down, and I'll never forget that because I was I was totally embarrassed, but I loved climbing those trees. I just wanted to go as high as I could. You just felt like you were above the clouds.
It sounds just like Larry. I mean, with having 5 brothers, it sure could have been, one of the others, but that sounds just like Larry.
Doesn't it? Yeah. I don't think it was Dennis.
Do you guys,
I think it was Larry. Yes. Go ahead, Julie.
Do you guys remember, I think it was the Forehands who built the bridge across
for sure.
the creek?
We all had bridges. So
did you have a bridge too?
So our bridge actually, and this is a Larry story, is that down by 13, our bridge was there. And Larry asked him what they were going to do with it. And the guy said, we're going to get rid of it. And he said, can we have it? And he said, you got to go ask your dad. And so then they brought that down. And then the Forehands built theirs. And then the Conwells, Mr. Conwell was high up in GM, and he had the engineers there design his bridge. So we used to have a bridge walk. Every Memorial Day we had, Labor Day. We had the Labor Day bridge walk across the Conwell's Bridge.
Oh, that's a great memory. I remember yours and Forehands. And I remember the Forehands had the brownie troops. And I sat in my backyard and watched. And what did they turn into? Oh, Girl Scouts. So
but they crossed the bridge.
When they crossed the bridge, they turned into Girl Scouts. Isn't that a cute little ceremony?
Yes, it is.
Any other creek stories before we move on? That was just a fun, cool thing that we grew up with. It was a lot of fun.
It made a great backdrop for when we had plays in Nancy Royal's backyard.
We're definitely okay. We can move on to that one. So we were the queens of imagination, and Yvonne
and pretend.
And pretend.
Just playing pretend.
Gosh, Yvonne was always roped in. Julie was always roped in. It was like we were alternated who would all be in. But there was it Jesus Christ Superstar?
Oh, that's the only one I remember. Who knows how many others
I've had organ concerts in my bedroom and Home on the Range. Oh, geez. I charged a penny with Nancy. My mom was like, quit playing that song over and over. But my favorite memory about that was, first of all, your photo, Beth, was so elaborate. We were serious. We had like legit costumes and we rehearsed.
We totally did.
We had a script, I remember.
Yes. And look at that. Look at that.
That's you in the middle, Julie. No, that's Nancy in the middle.
And I remember we got people came to watch us.
We went door to door knocking. Bring a chair, come to Nancy's backyard.
And they did.
Yes. But I remember I said we should have cookies at the end. Bring cookies.
Oh my gosh. I want to say we had brochures or something, or we wrote out
programs.
A program?
I know we wrote, because what's that famous song?
I know the one. I don't know how to love him.
That's yes,
that's it. Okay.
So mature we were.
And somebody had
we like 7 or something.
Who had the apple dress? The tree, the apple.
So this is where my parents started to lose faith early on in me. I obviously couldn't memorize lines or had a singing talent because I was chosen to be the apple tree for Adam and Eve. And all I did, because I must have said, I have an apple dress. And they're like, okay, you can be the apple. And I stood there, just stood there like a tree, no lines. And of course, I'm so proud because I love the production. And I get home and my parents are like, really? We went all that way for you to be a prop?
You killed it as the tree, Leanne. You killed it.
Totally. Well,
I brought Adam down.
We probably had to play like at 3:00 in the afternoon so that, parents had to come home from work or get dropped whatever they were doing.
Oh my gosh.
And
wasn't it Nancy, like the instigator? I mean, because her mom was very
Dreama
was very dramatic.
Yeah,
she was a singer and she
taught drama.
Yeah. I don't know how. I think we did more than just. I think we just loved plays. I think we loved pretending. I don't know. I thought we were pretty creative. But okay, so I love that story. So let's go to swimming pools. I mean, it was like. You were extra cool. So Yvonne had a pool. It was epic. And it was in ground along with Julie's. And I just remember thinking, I'm in heaven because your mom would come out with sliced watermelon, just cut it up right at the table. And we would just sit there and eat watermelon all day and swim. And I was like, this is better than Cranbrook Swim Club.
There it is.
Oh my gosh.
How
That's
fun.
you, Leanne.
Oh, look at, I could never fit into that today.
There was one picture I could not find where we're both looking at the camera, just smiling and smiling.
Oh.
But yeah.
Well, did your pool, so you both moved in with and built the pools, correct? Or did they come later?
So we came with an above ground that my parents had at their previous house. And then I think it was like just when we started late elementary, middle school, they built that in-ground pool.
Okay. Boy, so that's all I remember was that. Okay. Yeah. And Julie?
We put ours in a couple years after we moved in, and the company that put it in, the man who owned it, his nephew was there one summer helping him. His parents were in the military. His dad was in the military in Europe, and so he was in the States for the summer and working for his uncle for his pool company. And my sister ended up marrying him.
Oh my God!
They will have been married for 50 years in January.
Are you talking about Sandra?
Sandy, yeah, Sandy and Scott. Scott helped put in our pool.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
What a great story! Poor guy.
Yeah. Well, who was from Germany? Because I remember the cuckoo clock somebody came back with.
Yes. His family was stationed in his parents were stationed in Germany.
Okay, so maybe that's where I thought he was originally from. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, we had a German cuckoo clock too.
Oh, yes, you did. You did.
For a long time, but I don't know what happened to that. But anyways, I remember we did not have a swimming pool, so we relied on the invitations of other people.
Yeah, and I ride your bike around.
Yes,
I'm so hot.
I'm so hot. I just happen to have my bathing suit on.
This whole thing under my t-shirt.
No, your mom was so good, Julie, about inviting us over. Have the girls come over, use the pool. Yeah, your mom too.
Yeah, it was always
lots of fun.
And I do remember, so Julie had hair down to her bottom. Yep. And if we were going to go swimming, I just remember the arduous process of your mom having to brush your hair, make sure it was in a ponytail. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that is such beautiful hair. But it looked so painful to like go all the way down your golden locks. It was amazing.
That's so funny because when I was probably 6 or 7, I was in the pool constantly. You know, first thing in the morning, all day, probably you too, Yvonne, right? Like first thing in the morning, all day long. And always in a ponytail to keep my hair. And my mom took the ponytail out one day and there was like mildew on my hair. And she said, oh, guess what, Julie? You're getting your hair cut today. And off she took me to the beauty shop and the whole ponytail came off.
Was it just from like all the chlorine too and stuff?
Yep, just from, my hair was never dry because it was always wet under that.
Well, Yvonne, you had long hair too. Was yours like that?
Yeah.
And I did too.
I was lucky, but yeah.
Wow. And we go to the forehands too, because they had the above ground and we would do the, when you would run around in a circle to make the,
the
whirlpool or whatever.
Oh, and then they put in a built-in too later.
Oh, they did.
Yeah. But it used to be fun because we were the first house. We could drive from 13 and then we would see Johnny and Kevin jump over our fence to leave our pool when we were coming home from somewhere, which was so
classic.
Funny. Then they'd just be sitting outside waiting for us to invite them back in. But it was like, we know you were there.
That's hilarious. We did pool hop, but I tried to go in I went in other neighborhoods so that I wasn't always in my own neighborhood. So I also had this Cranbrook Swim Club we had to join because my parents were just kind of like, you can't keep stalking these people. So we belonged to Cranbrook Swim Club where I had to ride my bike up there every summer. And that's the other weird thing when we talk about when your kids are being raised, like I was on the bike, went up there. They don't even know if I ever got there. And I would be there all day and come home. And we've all raised, kids. It's like, isn't it amazing that I know we do these contrasts, but it is still so strange to me that there was just an abundance of trust and
independence.
Yeah.
Do you remember our signals?
Oh, for dinner?
Yeah. And when it was time to come in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I had a dinner bell And it was a black bell in the back of my yard. Yvonne, I think somebody had a whistle.
My dad would whistle.
Okay.
And you knew you had to be home.
Your dad did the whistle with his...
It was, exactly, Julie.
Catchpoles had a whistle.
Okay.
Yes.
And what was yours?
I had a cowbell. Ours was a cowbell.
Oh, yeah. Your mom would stand on the porch.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
I think our mom just yelled, dinner!
And everyone came.
The Chamberlains had a bell. I remember they had a certain bell.
Yeah, they had a bell.
And we all knew our bell.
Everyone's sounds. Oh, my gosh.
Right. And you just came racing down the street on bikes. If you didn't have a bike, you had nothing to do.
No.
We had bikes and we were just on them all day long.
All day. So one of my classic, so let's go to bikes, because one of my classic stories is putting the deck of like a card. And remember, you'd take a clothespin to make it sound like it was like a motorcycle. Well, that's a terrible sound. But, I don't know how to do the sound. But do you remember doing that and just thinking you were so cool? And next to you, Julie, were the Bartlemays.
Yes.
And they were close friends of my parents. My mom was really, really good friends with Kay. And Mr. Bartlemy would sit on the front porch and he would call me Ann Lee, and he would scream at the top of his lungs, "Ann Lee, get off my sidewalk." And it was like, I was so fearful. I'm thinking he owns this property. I don't know how to get around, right? He would get such a kick out of it. And I would just ride really fast with my car. But I mean, it was just, Ann Lee was the name he called me and screamed from that porch.
Do you remember what happened to the Bartlemays? Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
Oh, with the fire?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a little garden at the side of our house. Mm-hmm. And one day my dad was out checking the tomatoes or whatever. And he thought he heard and it was right next to the Bartlemays. Mm-hmm. And he thought he heard something. And he turned and looked at the Bartlemays' house, and the brick wall was kind of bowing. And he thought, am I seeing what?
Right.
He went over and he touched it, and it was burning hot. Mm-hmm. And he looked in and he could see the flames. And so he told my mom to call the fire department, and they told me to go down to your house, Leanne. Yeah. To get a key. Because no one knew if Norman was home, their son. Uh-huh. We knew the Bartlemays were at work, but no one knew if Norman, he was in college and was home sometimes, Mm-hmm. And so they said, but Julie, don't be panicky. And I said, okay. So I went down and rang your doorbell, and your mom came to the door and was like, hi. And I was like, hi. And she said, well, what's up? Well, we were just wondering if you had a key to the Bartlemays' house. And she says, well, yes. Why do you ask? Well, their house is on fire. Then your whole family was like, oh no, why didn't you say that? Everyone goes flying to get stuff, and finally I did too well at not being panicky, I guess.
Well, I hope Norman wasn't in the house.
Norman wasn't, but Betsy. Do you remember the dog, Betsy?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah.
Betsy was. And before even the fire department got there, your dad might have been one of them, Beth and Becca, came and brought hoses and opened the door, and smoke just billowed out. But they called the dog, and the dog came out. So, and one of them, it might have been Mr. Aronson, it might have been your dad too, went in to check for Norman.
Because he worked at a hotel a lot late at night, so his shifts were. Yeah. And it was where I learned the takeaway of unplugging your appliances when you go on vacation. I still don't always do it, but I am still to this day so conscious of it, because I think it was a coffee maker, I believe. It just short circuited and quite a bit of damage. Okay, so then I want to move to the Burkes. We had two on our street. So there was Terry Burke and Kevin and that family next to me. But around the bend in the next court was Denise Burke. And I forget what her parents' names were, forgive me. But my dad summoned the father to call our house as Santa every year. Oh. And I thought it was cool because I would know your family's voices, like your father's voices, I think, if I answered the phone. I didn't know who this man was for the life of me. Like it just didn't sound familiar. And he would go through and have a couple things that I did right and wrong, and, help my brother, didn't help my brother, gave him a concussion, those things. And, and isn't that cool that for years that man, because my parents weren't really close with them, like they weren't down at our house a lot, but that man would call the house and pretend to be Santa. Sweet. Yeah. Does anyone else have any memory of like some cool thing that, you partnered with neighbors on?
Yeah. You know what? I remember when our little brother, Rob, was born, because we were about 6.5 years old, and my mom went into labor in the middle of the night, and it was Mr. Catchpole that came in the middle of the night and stayed with us with just Becca and I. And then, so my dad could take my mom to the hospital or whatever. And he just was, I was just a wee little bit scared of him. I don't know why.
Because he was a train conductor?
Train conductor. Maybe just because I woke up in the middle of the night or whatever that circumstance
get up the next day and someone else is there.
Right. Stranger danger. Like,
I know. And I have no recollection of how long he stayed. Probably just until our grandmother could come, because they live downriver.
Okay.
So I don't imagine it was that long, but I have this vivid memory of him coming and me waking up, and there he was going downstairs. There's Mr. Catchpole.
I mean, that was the beauty of the neighborhood. Like
that's how you did it.
Always. And do you remember, like, if you were going to walk, especially down to your house, Yvonne, or vice versa, like you did the flashing of the porch lights to just let everybody remember that? Like, just let me know you're home, and stand out on the porch and flicker it. Love Thy Neighbor was big back then. I don't know what happened, but there are like some of those sweet things that I just miss about life today, not to get down on, but it's just, it was pure. It was beautiful. Hey, sorry for the interruption, but I need to say, attention all alumni. Are you ready to relive the glory days and reunite with your classmates? Look no further than myevent.com, the ultimate destination for planning unforgettable class reunions. With myevent.com, you're in control. Upload photos, upload event details, and connect with your classmates. And here's the best part: access your class reunion anytime, anywhere with their mobile app. Spread the word on social media and watch the excitement grow. myevent.com brings your past, present, and future together in one unforgettable event. Start planning your class reunion now. myevent.com. Your reunion, your way. All right, let's get back to the show.
We had
everybody watched out for each other.
Yes.
Yes.
We had a couple of things. When my middle brother, Chris, broke his back when he was 16. And the day he did it was the first day of summer vacation. And they were painting someone's house, he and my brother Tony. And it was super hot, and they had climbed a tree to have a Coke and cool off for a few minutes. And on the way down, he stepped on a dead branch and fell like 30 feet. They had gone way up high in this tree, and fell on the branch and broke his back. And they had taken my mom's car. And so my mom and I were home, and she didn't have a car. And the police called and really downplayed it because, they didn't want her to panic.
Like the fire.
So she was just annoyed. And had no car and couldn't figure out how to get there. And Mr. Royal was home. It was in the middle of the day. And Mr. Royal said, well, come on, I'll take you. And so he took her, and which was just, he was an artist, and he was busy working and doing stuff, but dropped everything. And then, it really became obvious really quickly that it was really bad. And just the whole neighborhood just really rallied around, and there were meals provided, and I was taken care of. Me and Tony were kind of put all around because it was really, really bad for a while. And then I remember when he came home months and months later, he was in a full body cast, and we had a station wagon, so he couldn't sit or stand. And we had a station wagon that they slid him into at the hospital to get him home. But to get him into our house, our house was one of those quad levels. So no matter what, you had to either go up or you had to go stairs. And to get him to where my parents were keeping him with a hospital bed and all that, there was a stairs, and all the men came. Mr. Aronson and Mr. Brownson and Mr. Chamberlain, and all the men came and carried this 16-year-old out of a station wagon on the stretcher into the house and got them all settled. So we just felt so loved.
Yeah,
from the neighbors. It was
that's a
fantastic.
Beautiful story to share about a neighborhood. Yeah. I do remember some of that for sure, and it was a long road. And another thing that's beautiful about your family, Yvonne and I went to the same church, and you were of the I don't want to say Mormon because I think it's later Church of Latter-day Saints.
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay, yeah. I want to be respectful of the name.
Yeah.
And so on Sundays, I would knock on that door, and I think I did it a few times until your mother finally spelled it out, like it's a day for family. And so Julie couldn't play with anyone because she was playing games with her family, and it was all this close-knit day of rest, truly. Yeah. And I remember just going back to my parents' house. First of all, I wanted to be a Little House on the Prairie and call my parents mom and pop. And then I wanted to play games on Sunday and like not do anything, and just be inside. And I don't know about you, Yvonne, but I wasn't going to get my two brothers to sit with me to play a game for the life of me. But it was such a beautiful thing that your family did that I remember. I remember you cannot knock on that door on Sunday because they are all together. And I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing things together as a family.
Yes. And you had how many siblings?
I'm the youngest of 5. My sister Sandy's the oldest, and then there's 3 in between.
Which was
Sandy got married when she was 18.
Yep.
And had her first child when she was 20. So there was extended family really quickly around too. Not only did we get to go ride our bikes unsupervised, they would send me out with a brand new baby in a stroller, and I'd disappear around the neighborhood for hours.
No sunblock. Just take them around. And Julie knows this story, but I learned about the birds and the bees because Sandy got pregnant, and Julie's mom said, "Do you have any questions?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, I've got questions." And she just kind of told me. So I remember my mom was driving me to remember Banned Drugs by Farmer Jazz.
Yes.
And we pull in, and I said, "Oh, Sandy's having a baby, and Julie's going to be an aunt, and here's how the baby was made." And I think she was just going to go right into the drugstore. But I mean, it saved her story time. But yeah, that's how I found out.
My family was very open.
Yes, it was very cool. Very, very cool. And Yvonne, you have a large family.
We do. We have 6 siblings. And
where were you? Are you the youngest?
I'm sorry, there's 7 kids. I'm number 6 of 7. So I was one of the younger. The older ones always teased because there was 4 kids, and then there was a break in time, and then there was the 3. So the 4 older were the original family. They would and I said, that's all fine, because what happens as time goes on, things get better. The parents, get established and all that. So we benefited from being that part of that second family. So.
Yeah. That's funny that's what you called it.
No, that's what the 4 older always said. They were the original. It's like,
so George was the youngest. Do you remember her youngest brother, George?
So it's Mike, Diane, Larry, Greg, Dennis, Yvonne, and George.
Right. Did you call him Georgie?
Oh, he is Georgie.
Georgie. Okay, I was going to say, I remember Georgie. Yeah.
And they had this big converter van. Like it was like,
oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. It was the Brady Bunch van. It was huge. Yeah. And I remember we would go down to your house, and your parents were wonderful because they were strict about PG versus G movies. And we would get
when they were watching.
Well, but that was nice. Like back then, that was nice that everybody, when people say maybe they were too lax and let us go, you had to bring the newspaper down and show the movie time, and we would pick all together. Remember that? Get the newspaper out, and we'd all go pile in that van and go to the movies. Yeah. Very classic. I have a memory with Yvonne. She came with me to Florida for spring break or something, or Easter or whatever it was.
It was,
but looking back, especially now that I live here, we experienced a hurricane.
We did.
And I think about that now, especially since I've been in so many. So we were, and talking about like the contrast of communication, we were in a rented condo, and Yvonne and I were in a pull-out couch, and my parents were in a 1-bedroom, and we heard the storm for sure, but it wasn't until the next morning there was just a piece of paper that they slid under the door that said, "Oh, you might want to sleep in the kitchen, in between the cabinets, and stay away from the windows." We were never there. Yeah. No one knocked on the door. No one notified us.
Do you remember, Leanne, that we looked out the window and the palm trees were like...
Oh, we were like, it sounded eerie. It was scary sounding.
And do you remember what happened to your parents' car?
Yes. Their windows blew out.
Yeah, because the whole one side, anybody who was parked on the one side, it came through and took out all the windows.
Took out all the windows. And the really weird thing in true Florida fashion was the next day the sun came out and we just went back to the beach. Like
we did.
But we were in a hurricane in Fort Myers. Like, geez. So here's Yvonne calling her parents on a payphone. Like, we're okay, but we were in a hurricane. So just to circle back, when you said your youngest brother was born, Beth and Becca, the twin life, we have to address it because it was such an anomaly then, especially Beth, you being a teacher now. Twins are like everywhere. Yep. And it was such a unique situation back then. So I would love to know about that and just start with, was there a history in your family or just a loving happenstance? Or
we actually didn't know that at the time that there were twins in our history and our heredity. Our dad was adopted. So we didn't have any background information, medical information. And as it turns out in hindsight, so he found out about his, where he came from around age 70. He did some research and he had maternal uncles. His mom's 2 brothers were twins.
After all this time.
Yep. So, yes.
So we finally know where we come from.
Yes. So
oh, my gosh.
Up one generation and over to his mom and then my dad, down to my dad. So
did you have, that's actually very sweet that even this late in life, he discovered that. I think that's actually beautiful. Did you have a secret language or
yes, we did. We didn't speak English.
Okay.
Yeah. We didn't even talk English words until we were about 3 years old.
So all your own sign language version of things.
It was a twin talk. So it was verbal. It was not hand signals, but we would be in some kind of gibberish and we would speak and we would completely understand each other. And so we were highly verbal but we would only communicate with each other.
Oh my gosh. And what a club.
Oh gosh. I do remember doing that a little bit, but, our parents tell us that they sat us down around 3 years old and said, you have to talk like mom and dad now. Basically, that's it. And I think that we were pretty good about it. I think we were probably just, we got to obey mom and dad. We're just going to, and I think we just immediately went into speaking like they did.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting because you two did, look alike and everything, but I thought of you as separate entities. I don't know if Julie and Yvonne felt the same way, but I noticed there were differences back then.
I think I always thought of you as twins. I think part of that, Leanne, is because of where I lived. Because it was that difference around the curve.
You weren't seeing them all the time.
I do know that me and you benefited a lot from them being twins because we got a lot of their clothes.
All the
time. At school together, wearing the same outfits. It was
all
awesome.
the time.
Well, our mom made us wear the same outfits until we were about 2nd grade. And then we had the same outfits going forward after that, but we could wear them on different days. Mm-hmm. So we had 2 of everything. So we were always giving pass-me-downs. And a lot of our clothes came from Karen Cronander.
Oh, some of them. And Paula Chamberlain.
And Paula Chamberlain.
Oh, yes, my gosh. Right, yeah.
So, but it's interesting, Leanne, that you say about the individual, looking at us as separate entities, because some people did, like you and Yvonne and other people. And of course, living so close to you guys, you just knew who was who. Other people wouldn't, necessarily put in the effort. They were just like, the twins, and it was always the Beth and Becca. We were one person, Beth and Becca.
Yeah.
My sister Sandy used to babysit sometimes for you guys.
She did.
And your mom would dress you in different colors and say Beth is in pink and Becca is in blue or whatever.
That's exactly
and then
what
you'd
it
go up
was.
and change. And then you'd go up and change.
We would
multiple times.
Yes, we did. I remember we were always going up, down, and we'd come back. And poor Sandy, I hope they paid her well. She did not know who we were.
She was like, well, I don't know which is which anymore, but.
Okay, last memory, and then I'll let you all go. But of course, trick-or-treating, such a fun time in the neighborhood. And we have to pay respects to our dentist, Judy Lyle's father.
Yes.
It was a classic. You knew you were going to get, he was trying so hard to convert us all, like, go get your candy, but I'm going to give you a toothbrush and toothpaste when you go trick-or-treating,
and he did,
right?
Every year.
Yes. Every year he did. And my parents used to always say, don't you dare skip Dr. Lyle's house.
Yes.
I was such a geek. I loved it. I couldn't wait. I thought that was just so
he had his
cool
name on it. Like, remember?
Yes.
They had gold embossing on it. Like, totally cool. And then the homes that had the big candies, I can't recall, but it was a big deal if you had the big full bars. Size.
The big bars.
And someone on our street, I want to say around the bend in one of the courts, would have the garage where you go in and it was like a little haunted house.
Yep.
Going
with the grapes and water, and you had to stick your hand in, and there was eyeballs.
Yes, exactly. Well, we did have a great neighborhood. Is there anything before we go that I missed that somebody had on their notes or wanted to mention? Because we have a lot. We could talk all night long for sure.
Oh, we could. The slumber parties.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So many slumber parties, sleeping in the living room and just like making breakfast in the morning and having corn on the cob at night. We would just have so much fun.
I don't think kids do that where they, it's funny because we all slept in sleeping bags on the floor.
Right.
Out in the tent.
Yes.
Or on a couch or whatever. And now that's like I know my kids when they would go places or they'd have kids over, you had them in a bed.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have an extra spare room? No, I don't have a spare room.
No. And you're collecting their technology. So they're not, there's not goofiness going on.
Very different.
And I don't know if it's also because there was a real trust that our parents all knew each other. Yeah. I know that life is different now. So, to go to someone's house, if you haven't had an opportunity to get to know the parents, makes a difference. But it's such a fun way to grow up, to have those memories of being up all night and just laughing and giggling. And, there was such beauty and purity in it. And it's such an unfortunate thing that a lot of kids don't do that at all anymore.
Oh, absolutely. That's the memory, the laughter, the playing silly games, like the clapping games, Miss Mary, Mac.
Broke her
dressed
back,
in
back,
black.
Yeah. That, and we played kick the can. We played Red Rover.
Freeze tag.
Freeze tag. Oh, a lot of freeze tag.
Red
light before that Squid Game.
Red light, green light.
Yeah, right. Some of you may not, because again, around the bend in our own club, the Deatons were in the court. And so Yvonne and I, for sure, because we were down at that side, and Bridget, their dad was a golf pro, and he had a long Cadillac. And he would come home and we would all, if we were out playing in the Picar's yard and stuff, playing basketball, we'd all hop on the back of his Cadillac and he would drive us up the court. No helmets. We just did it. We all just popped on. Do you remember that, Yvonne?
I do. And do you remember that every year, I would assume it was 4th of July, he did a fireworks show.
That's right.
Yes, in the court. Yeah. And then there would be somebody inevitably who had a toboggan that would drive the cars around the neighborhood. Yeah, so great.
I just have such happy memories of late summer evenings where it would seem like the whole neighborhood would be out on their porches.
Yep.
And families would just take different turns going for walks and stopping and visiting.
Yes.
And then you'd keep going a little bit. And
yes.
It was just a very happy.
It was very friendly.
A very friendly, happy neighborhood.
We, for years, did Christmas breakfast with the Four Hands. So the Four Hands and Conwells were really close with my parents. And so Mrs. Forehand started several years before they moved out doing like a brunch at their house on Christmas morning. And so we would go there. And then even after they moved, the Camels and Forens moved together to another, I think it was Howell. We went there a couple times for Christmas brunch. So nice. It was always something. I mean, everybody, I think, had their little
traditions.
Yes.
Yeah. I just saw Nancy last weekend. So I went to visit her in Chicago. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
That's great.
Well, you're all next on my list. So be prepared.
Good.
Yeah.
Come visit.
Yep. Well, I can't thank you enough. I know it was very special to me to have all of you on. I've done neighborhoods before, but this was special because it's Eldridge Lane, and all of you had such an important piece in my story. And I value your time tonight. I just love it. I'm going to get a little misty probably when we hang up, but it means a lot to see all of you. And I so full of gratitude that you agreed to do this tonight. So thank you so very, very much.
Thanks for the invitation.
You're very welcome. This was so much fun and so good to see all of you.
And wasn't it fun? The Brady Bunch. Okay, good night, everybody. Don't forget to stick around. Okay.
All right, friends. That's it for this episode of Class Reunion Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show, write us a review, and share this podcast with a friend. Until next time.